Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, as this was originally done on the seventh-day Sabbath and the first day of the seventh month, or Yom Teruah, okay, or Rosh Hashanah, or the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets. So the day we originally did this message, again, was the first day of the seventh month of the year 5783. It was also the last day, the 30th day of September 2023 on the Gregorian calendar, and a seventh-day Sabbath. Today is the seventh day, or Friday, preceding the seventh-day Sabbath. It's the seventh day of the seventh month of the year 5783 on the set-apart calendar. So we're not going to open in prayer. We did that on Sabbath. We're going to jump right into this lesson. We really felt we had technical issues on Sabbath, and we really felt that this message was so important that we wanted to do it again, because the first video was spoiled. The audio, or the sound, was going in and out, and it had feedback on it. So it wouldn't have been good at all to post that video. That's why we didn't. So we'll hopefully have this up sometime this evening or first thing tomorrow, and then we'll do a regular Sabbath message then. Again, this message is titled Yom, or Day, Teruah, Day of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the month, or the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets. The day Rosh, H7218 in Hebrew, that's the Strong's number, 7218 in Hebrew. Rosh means head, okay? It could be talking about your head, an animal's head, or the chief, a person that's in the top position, okay? So Rosh Hashanah is actually the head of the year, okay?
And the month.
And the head of the month. But Rosh Hashanah means head of the year. The Hebrew Strong's Concordance number for Shoshana is H for the Hebrew, 8141. So if you want to look that up, you can read those definitions. You can see we're not, making anything up. That's what Rosh Hashanah, Ha meaning the. So again, the head of the month. That's what it means, literally. So we're going to start out the traditional reading that we always do in Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to just read two verses here, 24 and 25.
Okay. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the seventh month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of the blowing of trumpets and holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto yhwh.
Now we need to, get that in our understanding what this is talking about. He says, speak to the sons, or children it has in the English Bible, but it's talking about the sons of Israel, because that's who was commanded to come up 3 times in a year to keep the feast. So he's telling them here, he says, speak to the children or sons of Israel, saying, in the seventh month, in the first day of the month, you'll have a Sabbath. Okay? This is one of the 4 that are mentioned as annual Sabbaths in Leviticus 23. Okay? So it's a memorial of the blowing of trumpets, a set-apart assembly. Okay? What you have to understand is all of these are set-apart assemblies. Everything mentioned in Leviticus 23, it is a set-apart assembly. This one is called out specifically as a Sabbath day or a rest day. And it says you shall do no ordinary work, like it says on all the rest, servile or ordinary work. So now we're going to go to Exodus 12. Isn't that correct, brother? Exodus 12.
Yep, verse 2.
And read verse 2. We're going to talk about that for a minute.
Exodus 12 and verse 2. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
Okay, so very important to understand that. This is the only month that he commanded that would be the beginning of months, or the head of the year, as far as commanded in Leviticus 23. You don't see Rosh Hashanah, okay, in Leviticus 23. There's nothing wrong with that because we're going to explain that as we go along. There's two types of calendar in the Hebrew calendar. One of them starts the year, and one of them starts what they call sabbatical years, okay? Or rest years, Sabbath rest years. We're going to go into that in detail. Okay, so, but we don't change our calendar unlike the people that are Jewish, okay? They change it at Atonement or Yom Kippur, and we're going to talk about that and why as we go along. So, now we're going to go to Leviticus 25 and break all that down. We're going to start in 1 and read through 28. Leviticus 25.
Okay. 1 through 28.
You'll see why they start the calendar there.
Okay. Verse 1.
Yes, sir.
And yhwh spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the mighty one.
So that's what it's talking about right here, okay? They're talking about when they come into the land, okay, they're going to keep a Sabbath for the land to give the land time to go fallow or rest, okay? Go ahead, brother.
Verse 3. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for yhwh. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard.
See, now, Israel had a beginning of the months to them, okay, which we saw was the month of Abib, or the beginning of after the spring equinox. We believe the first full moon or new moon after the spring equinox begins the month of Abib. But now they're telling them when they go into the land, once they get there, they're still in the wilderness when they're being commanded here, that they would give the land a rest. Now, they did that the very first year they came into the land because they reaped the harvest of the field. Okay, so we're going to see that as we continue. And then 7 years later, they did it again. They're going to tell you when to start these sabbatical years, and they're going to tell you when to end these sabbatical years. Go ahead, brother.
5. That which grows of his own accord of your harvest, you shall not reap, neither gather the grapes of your vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. So
there's a beginning of months and the beginning of months for Israel, but this is the land's Sabbath or rest. Go ahead, brother.
Verse 6, And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat, or be food for you.
Yes, sir.
For you and for your servant, and for your maid, and for your hired servant, and for your stranger that resides with you. So
he's telling them when you come into the land, you're going to eat what someone else sowed for that first year. Okay? Go ahead, brother.
7, And for your cattle and for the beasts that are in your land, shall all the increase thereof be for food.
So everything that they planted shall be for food, even for the animals. Go ahead.
Verse 8, And you shall number 7 Sabbaths of years unto you, 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto you 49 years. Okay, now we know that there's going to be 7 Sabbaths of the land, which come every 7 years, okay? And 7 times 7 is 49, okay? So that's 49 years. And then we're going to read in verse 9 about the Jubilee. Go ahead, brother. Then shall you cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, and the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. See, that's when they would begin that 50th year, and that's the same time they would begin every one of these sabbatical years, and that's why those that are in Judaism keep that as the beginning of their calendar. Now, do I agree with that? No, because he told Israel that
the month of Abib, or Abib would be the beginning of months for them, and this would be a Sabbath for the lands, and he said this would start on the 10th day of the month, 10th day of the 7th month, in the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, okay, that's what the Day of Atonement means, will you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. Go ahead, brother, 10.
And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. See, because it's going to break it down. It's not, you don't have to take my word for it. We're going to continue to read, because what's going to happen is some people are going to fall into trouble financially over those 49 years, okay? And they're going to end up probably leasing out or selling their property to their neighbor, okay? And so at the end of these 49 years and during the 50 years, they were supposed to return the land to the original owner. And Israelites, okay, if you read all this, they also would be released in the year of release if they went into servitude or became a bond servant, okay? Because they would sell themselves into bondage to repay a debt, just like you would today, okay? And when they do that, at the end of 7 years, those that were Israelite born, and that didn't mean that they had to be of the bloodline, that just meant they were born in the land of Israel and they had been circumcised, they were part of the covenant, that at that time, those people would be included as being born in the land. We're going to go ahead and read some more about the Jubilee, brother. Verse 11, a Jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. You shall not sow, neither reap that which grows of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of your vineyard undressed.
Now this is really taking some faith, okay, on Israel's part. And guess what? Israel never did it. Okay, they didn't complete these things and do them. All right, that's part of the reason why they ended up getting cut off. Moshe read this to them prior to them going into the promised land. So not only, remember we read before, they weren't supposed to sow or reap during the 7th year. So 7 times 7 is 49. So the 49th year they couldn't sow or reap. And now, here we are on the 50th year, and they can't sow or reap. They were going to eat what came up voluntarily of itself at that time period. So a lot of faith. And they had to be willing to give back the land to the original owners and set the bondservant free. Again, which they didn't do. Go ahead, brother.
Verse 12, for it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. See, that's repeating what I just said. They couldn't plant or harvest 2 years in a row, the 49th year or the 50th year. Apart to them, different, treated much differently than the other years. Go ahead. 13, in the year of this Jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession.
Yep, if you sold the land, if a man had to sell his land because he was poor, he would sell it to him, but then at the end of that 49th year, beginning the 50th year, he'd have to return that land to the original owner. Go ahead.
And if you sell anything unto your neighbor, or buy anything of your neighbor's hand, you shall not oppress one another.
So if you sell something to somebody, you're not going to cheat them. Okay, you're not going to oppress them. Go ahead.
According to the number of years after the Jubilee, you shall buy of your neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruits he shall sell unto you. Okay, so he's setting up conditions here on how you can sell your land off and what the conditions are of redeeming or repurchasing your own land. Okay, he says according to the numbers after the Jubilee. So let's say 10 years in, you had to sell your property. Okay, they could only charge them how much they would make off the land for the next 40 years for that property. And if they waited 40 years, then they could only charge them for 9 years, if you can understand how that worked. So they were not able to oppress them. Go ahead. 16. According to the multitude of years, you shall increase the price thereof, and according to the fewness of years, you shall diminish the price of it. For according to the number of the years of the fruits does he sell unto you.
So what you could grow off the land and sell, that's what you could count. So if there was, 48 years left, you could charge a lot more. If there was only 9 years left, you'd have to charge a whole lot less. It would be according to how much they could make off that land, and then they had to return it to the original owner. Go ahead, brother.
17. You shall not therefore take advantage of one another.
Yes, sir.
But you shall fear your Elohim, for I am yhwh.
Yes, sir. And so he's telling you right there, you don't do it. Remember, yhwh hears the cries of the poor. Okay? And when you're oppressing them or taking advantage of them, that's what oppressing means, then yhwh hears, and he's going to redeem, and he's going to make sure you pay for your deeds. Go ahead, brother.
18. Wherefore you shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and you shall dwell in the land in safety.
Again, it's not just talking about just the Jubilee year or just the land Sabbaths. He says, therefore, you shall do my statutes or my ordinances and keep my rules, my right rulings, and do them. And you will live in the land safely. He's going to protect you. That's a promise if you will keep his Torah. Go ahead.
19. And the land shall yield her fruit, and you shall eat your fill and dwell therein in safety.
Yep. Again, continue. You'll be able to eat all you want and still dwell there in safety. Go ahead.
And if you shall say, what shall we eat? What shall eat the Sabbath year? Behold, we shall not sow nor gather in our increase.
And that'd be a normal question, wouldn't it, for them to ask? What are we going to eat the 7th year if we're not able to sow or reap the increase of the land? Go ahead, brother.
21. Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit in 3 years. For 3 years.
Yes, sir. And that's in the 49th year, by the way. Okay, for 3 years, because that's the way that it works. Okay. And it's no different when the children of Yisrael were in the wilderness, and on Friday, he would give them manna, or bread that came down from the Shamayim, every day, but on the 6th day, he would give them a double portion so that they'd have enough on the Sabbath, and they wouldn't have to do toil to make their Sabbath meal. And it's no different here. You had to have faith and trust yahuah, that in the 49th year, he would give you enough increase to last you for 3 years. Okay, the year that you had the land rest, and then the next 2 years after that. Go ahead, brother.
22. And you shall sow the 8th year, and yet eat of the old fruit until the 9th year, till her fruits come in, ye shall eat of the old supply.
Yep. So that would be in the 7th year and in the 8th year. Go ahead. And also in the 49th and the 50th year. Go ahead.
23. The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and tenants with me.
So he's telling them straight up that the land's not theirs. It was handed out to them, okay, by Joshua, okay. It was handed out to them, but it's not theirs to keep. He gave certain parcels to certain tribes, and they were to return it if they had to do anything else. So they couldn't permanently sell the land because, like Brother Eric said, they were tenants on the land. Go ahead.
24. And in all the land of your possession, you shall grant a redemption for the land.
So you're going to be able to let your neighbor or your brother that sells his land to redeem his land. That means buy it back with no penalty. Go ahead, brother.
If your brother has become poor and has sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. So
if he's got a brother that can come pay his debt, they got to give it back to him immediately for the same money that they gave it to him for. Go ahead.
Okay, 26. And if the man have done to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, Then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the surplus unto the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possession.
So in other words, let's say he got it in the 48th year, and then in the 45th year, he was able to redeem it, either him or his brother. They had to return everything that they could have got from that land from the 45th year all the way down. Go ahead, brother.
28. But if he be not able to restore it to him, then that which is sold shall remain in the hand of him that have bought it until the year of Jubilee, and in the Jubilee it shall go out, and he shall return unto his possession.
And he didn't do that. And that's why, and Israel as a nation didn't ever turn all the land back over like they were supposed to. And that's why Isaiah chapter 58, which we'll be going over on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. Go ahead, brother. 29.
That is it.
Oh, that's all we're going to read, is 28. Okay, now we're going to Genesis chapter 6, Numbers 10. I get it right. Numbers chapter 10. All right, too.
That's why you have to read.
That's why I got to read it.
Numbers 10. Verse
1 through 10.
1 through 10. Okay, verse 1. And yhwh spake unto Moses, saying, Make you 2 trumpets of silver of a whole piece, shall you make them, that you may use them for the calling of the assembly and for the sojourning of the camps.
So, Moshe right now is commanding them to make 2 trumpets of silver. Okay? He said of a whole piece, so they couldn't be made out of multiple pieces. They had to beat it out by hand, make 2 trumpets with 2 pieces of silver. That you make them, and that you may use them for the calling of the assembly. Doesn't matter whether they were calling it to go to battle, now they had different ways of blowing, or if they were calling the assembly for the Sabbath, for the new moon, or for the Mohadim, the feast days. They would still blow these assembles, blow these trumpets so that Israel could assemble. Go ahead, verse 3.
And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to you at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation.
So that's where they would meet before they did anything. They would all come running to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Again, this was prior to them being in the land and having the temple which Solomon would build. Go ahead, brother.
And if they blow but with 1 trumpet, then the princes, which are heads of thousands of Israel, shall gather themselves unto you.
Unto Moses. Go ahead.
Verse 5. When you blow an alarm, then the camps that lie in the east parts shall go forward.
So they would go and form formations. They wouldn't all go at the same time for fear of running over one another. That's with 1 trumpet, and you're going to see why. Go ahead.
Verse 6. When you blow an alarm the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall take their journey. They shall blow an alarm for their journeys.
So when they blow with 1 trumpet and they blow 2 blasts, you'll know that they're sounding an alarm and getting ready to move while they're in the wilderness. Go ahead, brother.
Verse 7. But when the congregation is to be gathered together, you shall blow, but you shall not sound an alarm. Okay,
so you're going to blow differently. Go ahead.
And the sons of Aaron, the priest, shall blow with the trumpets, and they shall be unto you for ordinance forever throughout your generation.
So it's going to be for a right ruling. It's going to be part of the Torah forever. Go ahead.
And if you go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, then you shall blow an alarm with the trumpets, and you shall be remembered before yhwh, and you shall be saved from your enemies.
So, but you have to do some things, okay? You have to keep his Torah, and you have to keep his land Sabbaths. You have to keep his regular Sabbaths, his Mohadim, and his new moons, okay? Before this would happen. Okay, go ahead, brother.
10. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, you shall blow with trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your Elohim. I am yhwh.
All these things are memorials. Did you notice that? Let me read that. says also in the day, okay, of your gladness. That's Hebrew 8057 for a Strong's Concordance number. What, brother? What's gladness?
Okay, what was that number?
It's 8057.
8057.
What's he talking about? Remember they translated this in English, and in English people didn't care about keeping the Sabbath or the holy days or the Mohadim. They did what they did, okay? So they didn't translate this. Go ahead.
Okay, it says meaning joy, rejoicing, pleasure. It refers to the reality, the experience, manifestation of joy and gladness. Refers to a celebration of something with joyful and cheerful activities. It is practically equivalent to the Israelite days of feasting and celebrating over their Elohim and his blessings. Numbers 10.
So, and then it says, and in your solemn 4150,
which is feasting, feast days.
Feast days, Mohadim, 4150 in feast days, appointed times, feast days. That's what it means, okay? And he says, and in the beginning of your months, which is the new moon, which is beginning of your months. You got that wrote down?
Yep.
What's the
meaning
Strong's Concordance number?
Yep. 7218, masculine noun, meaning a head or a person, a point, the top, the beginning, the best, chief, a chief or a leader. It is clear from the multitude of legitimate translations of this word that it has many metaphorical meanings.
Yes, it does.
The word is used to refer to a human head, or it could be an animal.
So not any different than Rosh, is it? It means the same thing as Rosh does. Again, and it's like a head. It's round. And that's one of the reasons, and you can see it, okay? And that's when you look at Paleo-Hebrew or Phoenician, or the Picto alphabet, you're going to see that they use like an ox head for letters. Right. They use literal things, and when they call this the head, okay, the beginning of the months, and they call it the head of the month, makes sense to me that it would be the full moon. We're going to be talking about that more.
When it's nice and bright, almost looks like a face of a man.
It does. It does. I've heard it called the man in the moon.
Right.
Okay? So, I mean, this is not something that should be strange to you. So it says, so you're supposed to blow these trumpets, both of them, on your days of gladness or your feast days, and on the Mohadim, the feast days again, and in the beginning of your months. You shall blow with the trumpet over the burnt offerings, which we know all through the book of Numbers is talking about the offerings, and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings. Because that's what they were doing, was making peace between the people and yhwh so that they could approach him, his ruach actually, in the temple on these high days, or these Mohadim, before Elohim. I am yhwh. Okay, let's go to Genesis
6:3.
6:3. This is important. A lot of crazy doctrine comes from this. Okay, but especially here, you know, people think that you're talking about man's going to live 120 years. Let's read that, brother. Genesis 6:3.
Okay, and yhwh said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years."
Okay, 120 years. Okay? Now let's go read Psalms 90, verse 10.
Okay.
Because this would be a contradiction to this scripture we're getting ready to read, and that's why I'm...
Right. 90 and verse 10.
Yes, sir.
Wait till you get that.
Yeah, take me just a second. I'm going to hold my place because we're going to come right back to that. Because we're going to break that down and tell you what at least our opinion of what that says, what that's talking about. Psalm 90. More page. 90 and verse. Go ahead, brother.
The days of our years are 60 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it it is soon cut off and we fly away.
Well, there's a lot in this. Okay, remember, number one, that this is poetic. This is actually a psalm, so it's like a song. Okay, and some people say, look, we fly away off to heaven. No, your breath flies away off to heaven and goes back to the Father who gave it to you through His ruach. Okay, but it's held in the mind of Yahuwah, and the dead know nothing, according to Ecclesiastes. But let's listen to this even closer. It says the days of our years. That's mine, that's Brother Eric's, that's yours, okay? Or 70 or 70. And you look how many people don't live much past 70, okay? And then it says, and if by reason of strength they live to be 80 or 80 years old, yet is their strength labor. In other words, they labor to get around. They labor to have strength and sorrow, for it is soon cut off.
Yeah.
Not many live much past 80. Now some do. They live to maybe even 100.
Some don't make it to 60.
Nope. Some people died 40s, you know. But the average age of man, even on a life insurance chart, is about 75 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? So that makes perfect sense with this scripture. Now, 120 years doesn't make sense. Now, that doesn't mean a random person might not live to be 120 years old.
Right.
But that's not what I believe that it's saying in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 3. Let's break it down. Verse 3. And Yahuwah said, my ruach shall not always contend or deal with man. For he also, little e, little h, he being man, also is flesh. So he's not going to, be dealt with forever. Most people understand prophecy that there'll be 6,000 years of the rule of man, okay, from the time of Adam all the way up to the Messiah's return, and that millennial or 1,000-year reign is going to be about 6,000 years. He says, yet his days shall be 120 years. I believe that's talking about man's rule here on earth. And that's why the Ruach's going to be contending with us. After that, our Messiah is going to be here, and he's going to contend with everyone. And those that are in that priesthood after the order of Melchizedek will be ruling and reigning with him with a rod of iron. So you can understand this. Now, what I'm going to suggest, okay, again, it's conjecture. I'm not trying to say this is absolute. But we were just reading about Jubilees, okay? And we're leaning around sabbatical years. So a year, they used it like a day, okay, in Leviticus chapter 25. And to the Most High, to Yahuwah, a day is 1,000 years. Do you see the correlation, what we're talking about here? So if we're talking about Jubilee years, there's 50 Jubilees in 7 times 7 is 49 and 50 years. I'm trying to get this where it makes sense, okay? But 50 years divide 6,000 by 50 years. No, multiply. I do this every time. Multiply 50 years by 120. I'll get it right. Multiply 50 by 120, and that equals 6,000 years. So that makes perfect sense. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So again, I have a little hard time explaining that, but I hope that makes more sense, because a lot of people say they think that contradicts what we read in Psalms, and I don't believe it does. I believe that's prophetic with the time period while the Ruach is dealing with us, and when our Hamashiach Yahusha will be dealing with us during that millennial reign. So let's now talk a little bit about, because we're not going to carry on too much more, we're going to talk about the 6th month at which we just left. And we've just entered into the 7th month. Well, actually, we did last Sabbath, because this is a second take on this. But on the first day of the 7th month, there's something going on that we don't necessarily see directly in Scripture. The 6th month is known as the month of Elul, and it always has 30 days, no matter if you keep the full moon as the new moon, the sliver as the new moon, or the crescent, or the conjunction. It'll still have 30 days if you keep it by the first moon after the equinox. it'll always have 30 days. Okay? And that's important to understand. Okay? This Elul actually means to return. Okay? And what you're talking about is Teshuvah. And that's Hebrew Strong's Concordance number 866. So it's 866. 36.
Yep, 866.
You
Want me to read that?
Yeah, read that, brother.
Okay, it says, meaning an answer, a return. Refers to a response or reply given in a conversation or debate. You got Job in there. It also indicates a literal return to a location or destination.
Now, we're going to talk about just a little bit more at the end about the 3 times a year that Yisrael returned. Okay, and they returned to Jerusalem, the place where Yahuah chose to place his name there. Okay, so in the 6th month, the Hebrew history said that the king was in the field, or he was making his return to Jerusalem. Okay, and then on the day of trumpets, or Yom Teruah, or Rosh Hashanah, okay, it was meant that the king was at the door. And that's why on the memorial, the blowing of trumpets, it's also known as the day of shouting. Okay? It actually literally means this day of shouting or celebrating. And we read that in Numbers 10 as well, about celebrating and having that memorial. Okay? There's 40 days in total before the day of Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, from the first day of Elul. And the first 40 days, again, is talking about returning. And then the 10 days from the day of Yom Teruah, or the memorial of the blowing of trumpets, to atonement is what's called the days of awe. Okay? And during that time, they were to go back, if they hadn't, they were to humble themselves and go back to their brother and make things right, and then bring their sacrifice to the temple, their gift. And we can read that with Messiah, which we will read that on Yom Kippur, or Day of Atonement, which we will be keeping on Monday this coming week. Okay? So that's what that is all referencing. Okay? So that returning, not just Yahuah, but us returning to Him through repentance and humbling ourselves to make things right with our brother, okay, and with in the process making things right with the Most High, okay. So we're going to be talking about that now. Now we're going to continue. Well, I'm going to ask a question first. I wrote this down. I thought it was important. Shouldn't we always all prepare for all the feasts as if we were going home, going back to Jerusalem? Even though now wherever 2 or more are gathered in Yahushua's name, there he will be in the midst of us. And we know Shaul, or Paul, was keeping the feast. He kept the Feast of Unleavened Bread along the way. He kept the Day of First Fruits in hopes that he would be back to Jerusalem by the day of Shabbat, or Pentecost. Okay? So he was already keeping them wherever he was. And that's what we do now, but we're in hopes of going home to Jerusalem. Now, we'll all do that when Messiah returns and he gathers his elect from one end of the Shamayim to the other. So remember that. But we always, whether it be the Passover and we're getting ready to take the body and the blood of our Hamashiach Yahushua, we ought to get real serious about that and start thinking about how we need to return to our ways, or to repent, before we get ready. And Shavuot, or Pentecost, should be the same way, and also the Feast of Ingathering, or Sukkot, or Tabernacles. We should be ready to do that. So let's go finish up with Exodus chapter 23. We're just going to read 3 verses out.
Yep, 14 through 17.
Exodus. Then we're going to close. Exodus 23. Same as we started in Leviticus 23 and we finished in Exodus 23. 14 through 17, brother.
3 times you shall keep a feast unto me in a year.
So 3 times a year they were to go up to Jerusalem, and it was like they were going home. Go ahead, brother.
15. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you, in the time appointed of the month of Abib, for in it you came out from here before me empty.
Now we know what he's talking about here. He's talking about bringing in tithes and offerings at this time period. Peace offerings. Things that help themselves to be ready to approach the Most High. Okay, go ahead.
And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when he has gathered in your labors out of the field.
Now what's he talking about here? This is the second time. Now that they were to go home. Okay? But while they were there the first time in the days of unleavened bread, they also kept the feast of first fruits. Or, what's the other word, brother? First fruits?
First fruits.
Wave sheaf.
Yeah.
Wave sheaf. Okay, they started this Feast of Weeks on the Feast of First Fruits, and they gave the green ears a handful of those early barley harvest, and then they would go back home where they came from, and they would pull in the rest of the barley and all of the wheat, and so that they would return on the day of Shavuot or Pentecost. And that's what he's talking about here. This is the next time of year when they would come back, and the Feast of go ahead, brother. Then in the Feast of Ingathering. That's talking about tabernacle.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you come back in tabernacles, but they didn't come back. They started their journey on the day of trumpets, or Yom Teruah. Okay, so they had to be back by this. I would say they had to be back by the 10th day of the month, because at that day is when they offered their offering before the Most High. 3 times in a, so again, in the Feast of Ingathering, feast 3 times in a year, all males. That's why most of the place where you see children of Israel, okay, it's Ben, or sons of Israel, shall appear before Yahuah your Elohim. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't bring his wives and his daughters and his herds and his flocks and all those things. They did. But the sons of Israel were commanded as head of household to appear before Yahuah 3 times a year, and that was a type of returning home. So hopefully someone has got something out of this message. They've learned a little more about the Day of Trumpets and about all the feasts and how we should approach them. And now we're coming right up on the day of Yom Kippur, or Atonement. And if you've got aught against your brother, or your brother got aught against you, now is the time during these 10 days from trumpets to atonement to make things right with your brother. Our Messiah, we're going to read that on Monday, said, if you have aught against your brother and you appear at the temple, lay your gift down and go back and make things right with your brother. That's humbling yourself, and that's what we're supposed to be doing for atonement. So hopefully somebody, again, got something out. Hopefully, we hope that you've subscribed to the Philadelphia Assemblies already. But if you haven't, please do so. And also be ready, because our new video, Signs in the Heavens, is going to be coming out very soon. Okay, we're working on the editing and everything of the video. And we're going to be looking forward from this video to next Passover on the 14th day of the 7th month, as we keep the feast by the full moon as the new moon. On April the 8th, 2024, there's going to be a total eclipse in southern Illinois. Yes, and we have been the epicenter. Everyone along the New Madrid Fault, which is right close, we're on it here in southern Illinois. We were also the epicenter in 2017. It went through here from the opposite direction in 2017, and it's going to come back through from the opposite direction.
To X.
Yes, so it made an X right here on the spot. Okay, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We invite everyone to come down and keep the Passover with us, or just to come down and experience the event. Okay, because you'll not see this in your lifetime. If you've never seen a total eclipse, don't miss it. There won't be another one until 2042.
And that'll be in the month of August.
And it won't be here. Okay?
Right.
So, again, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And then if you like this video, give it a thumbs up on YouTube. Share it to your Facebook page. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you get notified of our next video when it comes out. May Yahuwah bless until we meet again.